What is going on in the world? Well, apparently African leaders are fed up with the West trying to sell them democracy. Do they have a point? What up, guys? My name is Sa Ra Garvey. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Thank you all for tuning in again. Come on in. Today we are going to be talking about Fred Mbembe. Now, who is Fred Mbembe? Now, Fred Mbembe is the leader of the Socialist Party in Zambia, and he recently made a speech calling out the West for their terms and conditions of democracy. Now, it has sent shockwaves around Africa because I think that the mask of the West may be slowly slipping.
At the end of this month, there will be a conference in Lusaka, or a summit in Lusaka, Zambia, my country, led by the United States. They have come to Southern Africa to teach us democracy. A country that was opposed to our liberation, a country that supported colonial regimes, the apartheid regime in South Africa, the white racist minority regime in Zimbabwe, now Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, the Portuguese colonial governments in Mozambique, in Angola, in Guinea-Bissau, and Cape Verde. Today is coming to Africa to teach us about democracy.
It seems like a very egotistical stance to have, a very arrogant stance to have. If you have consistently been a part of this people's degradation, then how now do you come into their country to teach them how to be quote unquote democratic?
A country that has toppled so many governments in Africa, that has led so many coups in Africa and other parts of the world. A country that has killed so many of our leaders in Africa and other parts of the world. The killers of Patrice Lumumba, those who toppled Kwame Nkrumah, those who killed Nasser, those who killed Muammar Gaddafi, today are coming to teach us about democracy. A country that has been built on brutal force, on enslavement of other human beings, on the humiliation of Africans, the exploitation of Africans, the plunder of Africa, today is coming to teach us about democracy.
What Mbembe is actually saying is that there has been a racist history from the West in Africa. And you don't just get to move into Africa or to come and visit and teach them about how to be good people when historically you have been bad to them. Now, I understand the arrogance of people and probably the arrogance of the West in general when it comes to other countries. There are other countries that you could probably learn from. Maybe Zambia, maybe other African countries, maybe countries in the Middle East. I think the West and the Western people, me, myself being one living in the West, have an arrogance and an ego when it comes to countries that we deem that are quote unquote lesser than us.
That's the arrogance, the imperialist arrogance, the racist arrogance that we're subjected to. We cannot have democracy where there is hegemony of the strongest, mightiest imperialist power. We cannot have democracy where a country's resources, a country's decisions are dictated to by another country. A country that is dominated by another country cannot be democratic. A country that lacks sovereignty cannot be democratic. A people that cannot decide for themselves cannot be democratic. A colony, a neo-colony cannot be democratic. That's why today, even at the United Nations, membership is on the basis of sovereignty. Only sovereign nations can be members of the United Nations, because only sovereign nations can decide for themselves.
He actually just emphasized one of the things that I've been saying for years when it comes to certain African and Caribbean countries. They celebrate their quote-unquote independence days. And one of my rebuttals to that has always been, if you are not free from colonial powers, if you are not free to dictate to your own people in a good way, if you are not free to make your own mistakes and, you know, and your own glory, then you cannot call yourself a free, independent, democratic country or state. And a lot of these countries within Africa are still, quote unquote, slaves to their colonial historical masters. So what Mbembe is actually saying actually rings true to me. It actually resonates with me, because I believe that you have to be a sovereign nation. You have to be a sovereign country, because no country, even outside of Africa, Europe, France wouldn't have it, Germany wouldn't have it, the UK wouldn't have it, the US wouldn't have it. They wouldn't have somebody else meddling within their affairs. They are sovereign nations and they can make decisions for themselves. However, because of the historical context and because of the history of Africa where the West has got involved, they still see Africa as some kind of baby that they need to meddle in. I think it's time, and I think what's happening is African leaders are waking up to the fact of their actual independence and the fact that they do not need the West's backing to be independent. They can be independent themselves, and they can do this for themselves. It actually takes time, it takes money, it takes resources, and if Africa have all of those without anybody meddling within that, then they can be free and democratic.
A colony cannot be a member of the United Nations. It's not by accident. It's not a mistake. If you have no respect for the dignity of others, if you have no respect for the sovereignty of other countries, you cannot claim to be a champion of democracy. They used to say, all roads lead to Rome. Today, we can confidently say, all roads to progress, all roads to what is better for humanity leads to Beijing.
So on a personal note, I don't necessarily believe that. Africa has a history with being colonized, and in my personal point of view, while China may be doing good things in Africa and helping certain African leaders, what they are essentially doing is buying up African resources, is buying up African political pull, and what they are doing is that they are now becoming the new colonizers with a smile on their face, and also they may build roads and help with infrastructure, but essentially Africans need to understand that because it is the breadbasket of the world, because all of the resources that are actually in Africa, people from outside Africa will always try to get a foothold within those resources.
This is a people that has developed themselves, that has developed itself without colonizing any country in the world, without plundering any country in the world, without subjugating any people in the world. This is a country that is developing with maximum respect for others, for their history, for their cultures, and recognizes the diversity that is there in civilization. We were only taught one form of civilization, one form of modernization. That was the Western way. Westernness was a measure of how civilized, how modern you are. we reject that. We reject it because it's not correct. We reject it because it's undemocratic. We reject it because it's uncivilized to think of the world and of other people in that way. Today, they cannot accept the fact that China has caught up with them. China is about to surpass them in many areas of human endeavor. The imperialist arrogance is inhibiting them from accepting that reality. The racist arrogance is inhibiting them from accepting that reality. But the world is changing. The changes we are witnessing today, as President Xi said in Moscow recently, or the other day, they have never been seen in 100 years. They have shaped a world that they themselves today are scared of. And they have shaped a world that is not sustainable. Democracy, human development is not sustainable on the basis of plunder, on the basis of enslavement, on the basis of humiliating other people every day. That is a system we are seeing today, a system that will not survive if plunder is eliminated, if subjugation of other peoples, other nations is eliminated, if inequality in the world is eliminated. That system will disappear. The only system that can survive and can endure for long is a system that is based on mutual benefit, win-win relationships, mutual respect for others, accommodation and tolerance of others, and fraternal love for all humanity.
I think he makes a very interesting point. Without plunder and without the exploitation of other people, how does the West actually survive? When you look at the West and the way in which it's built, it's actually built on a lot of plunder. It's actually built on resources from outside of the West. If you look at America, if you look at Europe, if you look at the UK, you will find that a lot of the imports are from other countries, whether they be food, whether they be oil, whether they be gas, whether they be the things that are going to generally sustain a country, come from outside. So the question that he's asking, or the thing that he's saying is, without plunder, would the West actually survive? I am Sa Ra Garvey. Thank you all for tuning in. That to me was a very interesting one, which left a lot of questions to be answered. Thank you all for joining me today. You better like, you better share, you better subscribe. As we keep asking the question, what is going on in the world? I will be here asking that same question over and over again until we come to some kind of conclusions, and just to let people know exactly what is going on in the world, because a lot of people don't actually know. So thanks for tuning in. I will catch you on the flip side.